Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. Hope everybody is having a great week. I'm having a great week. This other show that I've told you about, America's Missing Podcast, a creation between myself and my co-host of that show, Melissa. Very excited about the response. The response is we're getting to our first case already. It's a podcast, so already it's gone quite high onto, like, for example, the Podomatic rankings. When you get into something like this, and I've told you, this is one of my hobbies that lies outside of politics and what I do in my daily life. It's always been a popular topic. That's why, going way back, there was the show In Search Of, hosted by Leonard Nimoy, and then Unsolved Mysteries, which is a huge show in the 1980s into the 90s. And that's why you have the ID channel, a channel specifically devoted to disappearances and unsolved crimes. And I think they do some solved stuff too, and forensic files. People love that stuff, even well before CSI ever got on to TV. In fact, you could say that the reason that CSI was ever created was because of people's continuing fascination with mysteries and how the police go about solving crimes. And, of course, that show is about late 20th century, 21st century techniques of solving crimes through computers and DNA, stuff like that. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that here we are, my partner and I, doing this show. And then suddenly, without even quite a bit of marketing, it goes quite high up into the rankings in Podomatic. In fact, I'm very surprised even it went that high so fast. And we really haven't even done that much marketing. So we're very excited about that. And you just, once you tap into something like that, then you really do figure out, when you surround yourself with it and are doing a show, you suddenly find out that there are many people out there looking for something like that. So, and it's a little bit of a niche, but the people who are in that niche take it very seriously. And hopefully we continue to work our way up the rankings in iTunes and Podomatic. And, of course, we are on YouTube as well. It's called America's Missing Podcast. And the tagline is, "Thank you for finding us." So there you go. So let's get to this show. My other passion, probably my number one passion, and that's fighting liberalism and being a conservative. I want to start out today with this. I saw the story at Politico.com, read it, but always, when you go to Politico, you always have to keep in mind what you're reading and who's writing it. But then I saw that Leon Wolf at redstate.com also responded to the article. He cited it in a blog post there and talking about it. So I felt, well, maybe I do need to talk about it. And the story is talk radio declining? And more to the point, conservative talk radio. And then, of course, when you start talking about conservative talk radio, the first name out of everybody's mouth is Rush Limbaugh. And the Politico article, and this isn't the first time they've written a story like this. In fact, they've been writing stories like this for 10 years. And I can remember when I was listening to Rush more frequently. I don't listen to him at all now. Anything that I hear about Rush's show is because I read it somewhere. I haven't listened to his show in its regularly scheduled time between noon and 3 Eastern. I'm going to say in 5 years. I'm going to say. But when I used to listen to him much more regularly, I had a job where I was driving a lot when I lived in Las Vegas and listened to him. But he was talking about this way back then. He'd cite a New York Times article or Washington Post article about how the decline of talk radio, this could have been going back to somewhere like 2005 to 2009, somewhere in there. And I think at the time he poo-pooed it, Rush did, and I think he was correct. These were just things trying to, seeing the liberal media, these newspapers, other places, seeing what they want to see. They want to hope that conservative talk radio is declining, and so they write an article about it, not really sure whether there's any proof of that or not. However, in the Politico article, it is a little bit about what happened with Rush and how it reverberated to other radio shows and radio show hosts and stations when the Sandra Fluke, I'm not going to say it the real name because I might mess it up, controversy started, whatever year that was that 2011, 2012? I think it was after I moved to Florida, which was October 2011. I think. Maybe it was before that. At the time, I'm telling you people, the time goes so fast, I can't even begin to explain how fast time is flying in my life. In any case, but the reverberations and the advertisers who backed out of his show, and some of them came back, some of them didn't come back, but not only did it affect his show, but other shows as well. And so there was that. But I think the other part of this, and what Leon Wolf taps into more than what they do in Politico, is what you're listening to right here. Is you are listening to a station, Red State Talk Radio, that exists on the internet almost exclusively. There are some terrestrial radio stations that play our signal as their own. But if you're listening to this, it's either coming out of your phone, it's coming out of your computer. If you're listening to my show, you're downloading it from some website. You know all the places you can find it: YouTube, Podomatic, Podbean, and SoundCloud. iTunes. I have a new iTunes RSS feed, by the way. Just did that within the last couple of days. Kind of got back and researched that after I thought I needed to do something, after seeing what the other new show is going to be doing with this RSS feed. I decided to look at the RSS feed for this show and kind of redo it. But if you're listening to the show, you're getting it from a computer for the most part. You're not getting it through an antenna. And that is more what I'm interested in about this. Now, there is the other part of this, and Politico gets into this. Leon Wolf doesn't as much, is how many conservative talk show hosts have embraced Donald Trump. And that's been an ongoing topic here. And Politico wonders whether there will be any reverberations from that. And I think there will be. In fact, there should be. So it's like a two-pronged issue here. It's not just that technology is changing. It's that we've had something go on in politics within the last year that has split up conservatives into two distinct camps. One bigger than the other. I think that the conservatives who are going to go for Donald Trump is much larger than the conservatives who are the Never Trump people, and I can admit that as a Never Trump person, and I have no problem saying that. But that can split up audiences, and that is something that can last for a while. And keep in mind, the only reason all of these hosts are on the radio or wherever they are is because the listeners support them. And I don't necessarily mean with dollars, but by tuning in. And when people stop tuning in, then those people automatically lose their popularity. This isn't like, I was trying to think of a good example, like a sprinter, being that we have the Olympics coming up this summer. We'll see if those things go off the way they should, being that they're held in Rio. Every day I read a bad story about that. But in any case, you know my attitude. If you're going to have the Olympics, you should just hold it in the United States every 4 years. We don't have to do all this building and build golf courses and arenas and in infrastructure and airports. We don't need to do that. All of it's already here. It's already here. And I know all the backroom deals and payoffs. I know. I get it. It's unfortunate. It sucks. But if you're going to have the Olympics, it should just be held in the United States. Winter and Summer Olympics, by the way. But in any case, if it's not like these talk radio show hosts are sprinters, where they don't need a crowd. All there is a race, and all they have to do is win. It's not like that. These people need other people to listen, to pay for advertising, to say, hey, I listened to Rush today. Did you hear what he said? If that isn't happening, these people, no matter what they're saying on the radio, doesn't matter. It's just going out into, what they talk, they're just broadcasting into the abyss. If nobody's going to talk about the show and create, some kind of hubbub about the show. And that's going to be harder to do as more competition comes online. And what is stated in the Politico article is how every car eventually is going to have Bluetooth in it, and you're going to be able to get Wi-Fi in your car, and a lot of new cars already have that. Me and my 2001 Ford Taurus do not, as you can imagine. It would be cool, though. And so more competition is coming online. In fact, its competition already exists. It's just that the technology hasn't been there to get to more people. Well, now it's going to be. And terrestrial radio stations are going to have to continue to fight for market share. And what's going to happen because of that is that all of these hosts who have made big money off of terrestrial radio, eventually, due to the market, their fees are going to come down. And I think that that's when, you know what I've said. I've said I believe we need a huge turnover in conservative media leadership on our side. The same people have been leading for so many years, and despite what has gone on, just take Donald Trump in the last year out of it, we haven't had as much success as you would think we should have. Right? If you were a conservative 25 years ago, and if I told you back then in 1991 that Rush Limbaugh had only been on the radio for 3 years at that time, 2 or 3 years at that time, if I had told you that he's still on the air in 2016 and there's all these other radio show hosts that are making big money doing radio, your average conservative in 1991 would think, well, I guess conservative has done pretty well. I'm thinking that the future's pretty bright. Would you say that's how it's gone since 1991? I wouldn't. As I've stated many times before, if these talk show hosts were NFL football coaches, they would have been fired a long time ago. You can only have so many 6-10, 7-9, maybe a 9-7 season, then 8-8, then 7-9, and 6-10, or even 5-11 seasons before your butt gets canned. And that's kind of what has gone on with conservatism versus liberalism. It's been this trench warfare for all of these years. And whether it's in the NFL or in the Army, if you can't get it done, and if it's just battling over 100 yards of territory one way or the other, eventually somebody who is in even a higher command is going to make a command decision and move out the leadership and move different people in. Now, that's a little bit different because it's not necessarily done according to market share or anything like that. We know there are tons of football teams that are still popular despite them not being that good. The Cleveland Browns, for example. Even though the Cleveland Browns have never been to a Super Bowl, never win their division, or haven't done that since the 1980s, they still have a very rabid fan base. And I give all those people all the credit in the world. So even though the team is popular, that doesn't mean the ownership keeps the coach around. If he goes 3-13 or 4-12, he gets canned. Because the goal is winning. Likewise, in the military, you are judged upon whether you can win or not how popular you are. No matter how popular a general is to his underlings, if he can't win a battle, he's gone. He's canned. Once again, a different kind of command structure than we have in the private sector. But the reason that these conservative leaders have been around so far, I've told you, is because they sell beds, they sell reverse mortgages, they sell gold, they sell silver coins. That's why it has nothing to do with whether conservatism is successful or not. That's our problem. And dare I say it, if that had been told way back when they got into radio, well, we know that you're conservatism, but we know you're conservative. We love that. We think you do a great job in the radio, but your success is not going to be based on how much stuff you sell. It's going to be based on how many conservatives get into Congress and how many conservative amendments are added to the Constitution and how many regulations are rolled back, on and on and on, things that you'll be talking about every day. That's the way we're going to gauge whether you're having an influence or not. And dare I say it, if that had been the standard way back then, none of these people would have gotten into it. This is the reason conservatism fails, because our standard of what success is doesn't go along with the way these media members get paid. We as conservatives, I'll give you a political example regarding health care. Why is it that health care is so messed up? Not just with Obamacare, but even before that. Because the cost that each person pays is not relative to the procedure that the person gets done. I'll never forget. This sticks out in my mind as if it were yesterday. Went to the dentist. Now, I haven't had dental insurance since 2004. So ever since then, if I had to go to the doctor, paying out of pocket. Went to get my teeth cleaned. I'm going to say I was still in Las Vegas, 2008, 2009, something like that. They gave me the price for getting it done after I was done. And then the woman asked, and they gave me the price, and it was some crazy number. It was a crazy number. And I was like, what? And then she asked, well, you have insurance? And I said, no. As soon as I said that, I'm not making this up, she knocked 50% off the price. 50%. So it went from I don't even remember. So it was like $150 to $75, something like that. It was some crazy decrease in the price, simply because they knew they were getting cash right there on the spot. No paperwork, didn't have to wait to get paid, didn't have to make a call to insurance company, didn't have to argue with them about how much it costs. That is the reason that healthcare and dentistry in the United States is so expensive. If everybody was just paying out of their pocket, if there was a direct correlation between customer and service provider, the supply and demand would be much more in line, but it's not. In fact, we're going the opposite direction. We're getting more people between the patient and the doctor. Same way when it comes to conservative leaders, conservative media, and those conservatives who aren't in the entertainment business, who are just out here as accountants and teachers and truck drivers and engineers and fishermen, whatever the occupation may be. Those people rely on conservatism working. The people providing the conservative entertainment, these conservative media leaders, they rely on listeners buying the stuff they advertise on their shows. So it's not dependent on whether conservatism wins or not. It's only whether they can sell stuff. This is a problem. This is a problem. And I'm hoping with more competition from Red State Talk Radio, and we know there are other channels out there, people doing this because they are passionate not about reverse mortgages and gold coins, but because they are passionate about conservatism, that we can add some more balance back to all of this, because the way we've been doing it for the last 25 years doesn't work. I made the comment a couple months ago that in seeing what Rush and Sean Hannity and all these people who have gone out of their way to defend Donald Trump more than others, and some haven't at all. We know some haven't. Mark Levin has finally come around to never Trump. Glenn Beck, even though I think he's a kook, he's come around to never Trump. There are others. Eric Erickson, who I'm not even that big a fan of, he's come around to never Trump. And we know all the people who have gone into the Trump forever camp. I've said for a few times now that it's obvious to me the only way these people are ever going to retire is if they die. And there are increasingly too many of these people looking like they're not going to know when their time is up. Just hanging on tight. It's if they don't see, or maybe they do see, that they've been on the air for all of these years and have changed nothing. They've given people a lot of entertainment, a lot of hope, provided a lot of conservative information. But if the bottom line is conservatism winning, they have failed. No matter how many jets they have, no matter how many cars they have, no matter how many houses they have, conservatism has failed against liberalism over the last 20 years. And you know how I view it. The way I view conservatism is that it is a heavyweight. And not just a heavyweight, but the champion of the world. Better than Mike Tyson, better than Rocky Marciano, better than Evander Holyfield, better than Larry Holmes, better than Muhammad Ali, better than all of them. And we are getting beat by a lightweight, and that is liberalism. We are 250 pounds, skilled, practicing everything else, and every day we fight liberalism, and we lose way too much to like a 110-pounder. But we still hold in high regards these people who have led us to the point where we do continue to lose. Because the truth is this, we have made liberalism look a lot better than it is by allowing it to hang around. And it's a lot of doing of regular people, but it's a lot of doing with our conservative leaders. Once again, not in government, in the private sector. But I think we as conservatives, the reason that now maybe not so much lately, given that Sean Hannity's gone so into the tank for Donald Trump, but even before that, the reason that those people all get a pass is because we like them. They seem nice. They seem like good people. And if that's the case, then I guess maybe we deserve what we get. Because we know in life the only thing that matters is results. It matters how we get there, sure, morally, absolutely. The ends never justify the means, or that just winning, it's not winning at all cost. Is that the way I meant to put that? I think so. That does matter. But results do matter. I mean, if you're playing morally, then it's something once in a while you expect to win. In fact, you expect to win quite a bit. Doesn't happen. But we keep these people around because we like them, not because they've been successful in turning the United States in a particular way. So getting back to this couple stories that started all of this, terrestrial radio, talk radio is not going away. It's going to change form. It's going to change. More and more people with apps on their phones. There's, of course, the Red State Talk Radio app that you should have on your phone already to listen to me and all the other hosts here. People are just going to have more choices, and they're going to make decisions for themselves. That's part of it. But also part of it for the new crop of people who are doing this. Once again, a lot of people doing it for free like myself. I'm not afraid to admit that. A lot of these people doing it for free like ourselves, I think we should be more honest about conservatism and about our motives than maybe this past generation has been. And I think that's the reason that when I do this show, I'm not afraid to criticize my listeners. I'm not afraid to call out my fellow conservatives about things I think they're doing that are wrong. In fact, I'm doing that kind of right now. That I'm telling a lot of conservatives, you've let these conservative leaders skate just because you like them. And we have to get past the like stage. We have to get to the results stage. Because we know in our regular lives, results matter. You better get that work done in on time. That teacher, you better have your lessons plan ready, or else. That engineer, you better have those plans drawn up, or else for that bridge, for that building, you better do it. That accountant, April 15th is coming up. You better get that tax report done for that business or they're going to be in default. You better get it done. Doesn't matter how nice you are. Doesn't matter you took them out to lunch. For that engineer, doesn't matter how many equations you can do in your head. All it matters is the results. That's the private sector. Have we held our conservative media leaders to that standard? No, we haven't. Instead, it's been all about our own entertainment, our enjoyment, whether they make us laugh or not. And then what do we go do? We keep voting for the same politicians over and over and over. So I guess there's a lot of blame to go around. But this is the kind of talk you're not going to hear most other places. In fact, I was just talking to my partner, Melissa, a few days ago. I forget how this even came up. It had to do something with the case that we were looking at or we were thinking about doing. And I even brought up the topic of tough love in that. And telling it like it is, even if what we think or I think is different from what the family thinks happened to their loved one who disappeared. Because you can take a lot of crap for that. Being seen as uncaring and don't you know the family this and don't you know the family that. To me, I am concerned about looking at the facts and telling the truth. That's how I was raised. In fact, my parents still do that to me to this day. But But we've gotten away from that. And I hope that if conservative radio, talk radio is going to continue, is because it's based on success, on results, not whether people, feel like cozy and everything else makes them feel comfortable. It's somehow, at some point, it has to be results, based on results, or all of this, it really doesn't matter. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio, continuing, kind of going off on another tangent from what I talked about in the first half of the show. Speaking of radio hosts, I saw this article by Dennis Prager. You know who he is, has been seen as a conservative media leader for many years now. And he did an article, and it's in several different places. Where I happened to see the article was at creator.com, which I don't think is a site I've ever been to before. But I think I got to it through this new website that I tend to go to a lot now for information, being that I don't go to Breitbart or Drudge Report anymore. The newamericana.com, I would urge you all to check that out. Did an article, he is a never Hillary person. He's going to vote for Trump, and he tries to once again make the argument about why conservatives need to come around and vote for Donald Trump. And in it, he expresses the exact reason that conservatives continue to lose over the years, as I stated in the first half of the show. And I wrote a response there. I don't normally comment. I read a lot of articles where I'd love to comment, and I just don't. I just don't believe it's worth my time, and I want to craft it just right. But I've done this argument so many times just in my head and on this show that I can write it down and get the spelling and the punctuation correct pretty quickly, so I don't mind writing it. Other things I may have to think about, and I have to rearrange the words and everything, but as long as I think I can write my thoughts down fast and it looks intelligible, then I'll probably do it. But for the most part, I just pass by. But I did respond to Dennis Prager at creator.com. However, like I said, you can find the article elsewhere. I think it was also at townhall.com. And his argument, as I state in the comment, his argument is perfectly fine, as if this was the first time this has happened. But what he does, he refuses to acknowledge, and this is, once again, this is some kind of logic experiment that I'm not sure most people want to get into. But if the argument is that we have to vote against the Democrat, we have to vote against Hillary Clinton, if that is the argument, and that's what it is, because they can't defend Donald Trump on his own merits, the only way they can defend Donald Trump is by saying, well, he's better than Hillary. Well, since when in our regular relationships do we defend somebody's bad character by saying, well, somebody else is worse? We do not do that. We look at each person. Now, granted, each of us has different standards of what we want in friends and the people that we trust. But we don't do that compared to other people. We take each person based on who we think that person is, not in comparing it to others. But that's what those Never Hillary people are trying to do, and they cannot defend. In fact, Charles Murray makes that point in a National Review article today. He says, for all you people who are supporting Donald Trump, I want you to do that and never mention Hillary Clinton. It's tough to do, isn't it? It's tough to do. And so with Dennis Prager, he's making that argument just because Hillary Clinton is worse. Well, under that rationale, the Democrat is always going to be worse. And I even write out the years 2020, 2024, 2028, 2032, 2036, 2040. From now, and I hope to live to be 100, the Democrat is always going to be worse than the Republican. So, does that mean we vote Republican from now to the end of time? Because that kind of sounds to me like being a party hack. It just does. And as I told Dennis Prager, you can talk all you want about values. And maybe not the first election where you vote against your values, and not even the second or even the third, but at some point when you continue to vote against your values just because the other choice is worse, somebody actually might start to think, you know what, maybe those values don't mean that much to you. Maybe you're only paying lip service to them because you vote for the Republican all the time who doesn't share your values. Maybe you're just a party hack. Maybe. Maybe. And that is something that the Never Hillary crowd doesn't want to talk about. Because they never draw a line in the sand. Because I would say, being a 45-year-old adult, if you'll vote for Donald Trump as a Republican, you'll vote for anybody as a Republican. Anybody. So I don't want to hear it. I just don't want to hear it. What Dennis Prager is really doing, despite him thinking he's making some moral point here, is really he's just saying, you just got to vote for the Republican no matter what from now to the end of time. Now, how that is based on conservative values, and I remind you, as I say in the first part of the show, these people have made millions of dollars speaking about conservative values. But when it comes to elections, it's always, well, you have to vote for this guy because he's better than the other person. That is not conservative values. So on one hand, they're willing to make all of this money. Now, granted, it's capitalism. They have not forced anybody to do it. It's not tax dollars. They've earned it. But you can still be a hypocrite and be a capitalist. So all over here, speaking values. Whereas, had they started their careers, Dennis Prager's, Rush Limbaugh's way back when, and said, you know what? We don't have any values. We just want you to vote for the Republican all the time. None of them would have gone anywhere. None of them would have. So they make money off of values, but when it comes to voting, we just want you to vote for this guy. Doesn't matter, just because he's better than the other person. I'm sorry, that is a hypocrite attitude. It just is. And that Dennis Prager, a guy who I guess many people see as the moral conscience, he's seen as, I guess he talks a little bit more about religion than the other hosts do. Kind of maybe a little bit of an elder statesman of talk radio. That he would stoop to these levels just shows you how all this has become so distorted. And David French, who I might talk about before the show's over. David French, in rebuttal to Dennis Prager, makes a very good point. In that, say Donald Trump just gets one of these things right. Say he gets say they don't nominate another Supreme Court justice between now and November. Donald Trump gets elected and he picks one of the guys or women from that list that he brought out a couple weeks ago. Say he does that. Would that make up for would that be good enough to offset a trade war with China? Because if something really, really good can happen with Donald Trump, then can't something that he stated that's really, really bad also happen? What would be worse? And see, that's the other problem I have. All these people want to do is talk about the possibility of the good stuff. And that is a human trait. Because we want something, and because we have fear in ourselves, that we start hoping that the choice that we're going to make, even though we know it's bad, we cross our fingers. Gotta hope it's going to come out right. Crossing fingers and hoping do nothing. All that matters is the character of the person you put in office. And Donald Trump has no character, and I don't care what anybody has to say. I can look at him, and I don't need to compare him to any other figure I know in the world. I know he is a bad guy. And I don't know why anybody would want to be a part of that. I know that you can't stop him. Once again, I've said, I hope that Donald Trump lives to be 150 years old. I just don't want him close to anywhere near any sort of government power. I can't do anything about private sector power in his businesses or anything. The government is where the true power lies, and he knows it. He knows it. Likewise, I can look at Hillary Clinton and not have to compare to anybody else that I know in my life and just know what she's personally done, the choices that she has made, and know that she's a bad person too. That's why when you judge them equally and not against each other, you know neither is fit to be president of the United States. It's when you get into moral equivalency that people start to make what they think are rational decisions. But we're not supposed to have moral equivalency between people. There is only good and there is bad. And we know that. The problem is people know that. They know in their daily lives that that is the case. But we've convinced ourselves over too many years, and too many conservative media leaders doing this, that politics is different. Well, we have to make concessions here, we have to make concessions there, and I've told you, I fell into that argument too for a long time. Long time. That you have to vote for the Republican, I'm over it. I've seen that it doesn't work. Only an idiot would keep doing the same thing over and over, doing this moral equivalency because Mitt Romney's better than Barack Obama, John McCain's better than Barack Obama, George W. Bush is better than John Kerry, George W. Bush is better than Al Gore, going the whole way back, and then look at how the failures that conservatism has had, and then keep doing the same thing. Only an idiot would do that. And I don't want to be an idiot. Is that okay? At some point, the values that have been injected into me from my parents, from my friends, from people who I've looked as mentors in my life, in all of the different things that I've done, from my brothers and my sister, at some point that has to matter, right? Or is that just talk? I just want to know. Because the problem is we've convinced ourselves, because politicians need to lie to get into office, and because these deals need to be made and everything, that suddenly moral equivalency, moral relativism is okay. It's not. The truth is, you want to know the truth? Here's the truth. If everybody would sit home this election and not one person would vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump or any third party, I mean, I know that's total dreamland, but if that were to happen, that would have more of an effect on our politics in this country than any of those people getting elected. That's the truth. If voters held their leaders to the same height of morality that they hold their friends and their children and their spouses, this would change overnight. And it's very easy to do because people do it every day. But because we've been told for so many years that politics is different, and it's become, well, we have to beat the other side, This is what you get. This is what you get. And although I've been a conservative my whole life, I've been on the other side. For those of you who disagree with me, I've been where you are. I've never been where a liberal is. I'm not one of these converts. But I have been where you are. Probably since I started voting in the late 80s in Pennsylvania. Well, we got to vote against the Democrats because they're kooks. And they are kooks. That doesn't mean the other choice you make is right. And what's equally bad about this is that you could look at these prior years at Mitt Romney, not conservative, but you could say he's a better guy than Barack Obama is. And you could say that John McCain has more characters, not conservative, but more character than Barack Obama has. And going back to George W. Bush, even though they're conservative, none of them are conservative as I would have liked. And I still believe I made a mistake in voting for them, but at least you could say that. But this election, there is no difference. There is no difference in the character of Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. None. And that's what matters. They're both lying crooks. And that people need to go to all these lengths to say otherwise is hilarious to me. Dennis Prager included. That is disgusting. A guy who's talked about values and principles and morals and everything, to then say, well, we have to vote for one guy because he's better than a woman. That's moral relativism. That is not values. That's not principles. That's not integrity. That's not character. And don't tell me it doesn't matter. You can't say that doesn't matter and then expect the person to hold the office to have character. Don't give me that. I mentioned about Charles Murray before, and he does a very good job of that. Charles Murray, and I don't even know how conservative Charles Murray is, but he knows frauds when he sees them. And Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are two of the biggest in his opinion. And I would urge you to look at that article as well. He's the one that I mentioned earlier that said, try to tell me why you're going to vote for Donald Trump without ever mentioning Hillary Clinton. Tell me how good he is without mentioning Hillary Clinton. Can't do it. You elect a person with lacking in character. You cannot expect the character of a country to improve. You can't do it. And that's kind of what we need right now. We need a boost in our character, and we have two of the worst people with character running for office. And that's why we should have nothing to do with either of them. Now let me move on to something else. This is another way on how we just can't get this. It's just funny how we just can't get it right. David French is a never Trump guy. I agree with a lot of what he says at National Review. I've heard interviews with him, seen him interviewed or heard him interviewed in the last couple years. And he is a never Trump person, and I'm happy about that. But then what does he do? Writes an article for National Review asking that Mitt Romney run as a third party. See, we can't even get that right. I've told you that it may be that we need to we're just not sick enough. We're not like that alcoholic. We're just not tired of being tired yet. We're not tired of being drunk yet. We hate being drunk, but you know what? We'd rather be drunk than would be sober. Until a person really wants to be sober, in contrast to not drunk, there's a difference. An alcoholic is never going to get clean. We're not ready to be clean yet. Obviously, from David French. Here you are, you have two. Now, I know that character is an issue, and I think that Mitt Romney has very good character. I do believe that. Not conservative, though. And it's the exact reason, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't vote for him in 2012. Character matters, but you got to be conservative, too. To me. Character should always matter. I realize some people aren't going to be as conservative. Being character should be an issue for everybody. I realize that people are going to differ in their amount of conservatism in their life. I get it. Not a conservative enough for me. So here we are. You want to run a third party. David French is a never Trump person. And then he brings up Mitt Romney. We can't even get that right. Would it not seem that under these conditions that you could have your pick of the litter? You want to go character, but then you also want to go conservative. That's not Mitt Romney. If you want to go milquetoast, flip-floppy, kind of back and forth, you already have your guy. That's Donald Trump. Donald Trump kind of is Mitt Romney without character. Was a Democrat, was pro-life, was pro-choice, was this, was anti-gun, was pro-gun. It's kind of who Mitt Romney is. Even though I think as a man, he has character. Good husband, good father. I think he's a moral guy. He's not crude. He's not a demagogue. None of that. But he's not conservative. But you have all these other men or women out there who you could dream about running for third party, and David French picks this guy. That is unbelievable. Now, I did see a poll out there. It said if Mitt Romney were to run, it would be Hillary Clinton 37%, Donald Trump 35%, and Mitt Romney 22%. I don't know if you can believe that or not. I don't know. Here's what I know. I wouldn't vote for Mitt Romney for a third party. I mean, as I've told you, it could be that we just need to soak in this. We need maybe to let these people fail. And instead of trying to give the country some sort of golden parachute where somebody comes in as a third party and tries to save us from ourselves. Obvious to me that the only thing that's going to break us out of this is hitting rock bottom. And as I've told you, the only way this country is going to improve is it's going to get worse before it gets better. We're going to have to see some dark days before it gets better because all of us, most of us, too many of us, are continuing to lie to ourselves about how this can be fixed. As I've told you, haven't mentioned it recently, but regarding entitlements and the spending that's out of control, you know when that will get fixed? When checks start bouncing, and not a day before, not a second before. But when checks start bouncing, that's when we'll get this fixed. And until that, we'll just continue down this road of thinking that we can get skinny by eating chocolate. Because Mitt Romney, picking him as a third-party candidate, that's kind of what it seems like to me. I'm not even saying I would vote third party, but if you're going to do it and you're so motivated to do that, how about going out there and getting a conservative? I'm not saying it has to be Ted Cruz, maybe Ben Sasse, maybe somebody else. Mike Lee, somebody like that. Instead of just going halfway with it. I don't get it. But I would normally be inclined to save people who are drowning. But this is kind of like being up in the Himalayas. You know, Mount Everest. It could be that trying to save somebody might get your own self killed. You have to think about that. But I got to go. You can go to edwarddentzel.com where you can find all of my old Red State Talk radio shows. You can also find the Podbean, Podomatic, YouTube and SoundCloud. EdwardDentzel.com/book is where you can download for free the first chapter of my next novel called The Comebacks. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com, Twitter, Dentzel Domain. Find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I remind you once again about my new show, non-political show, called America's Missing Podcast. You can find that at YouTube, Podomatic, and iTunes. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.